If you are watching this video right now, there is a very good chance that you are either planning to move to Australia, you are already on a work visa there, or you are an employer who is sponsoring skilled workers from overseas. And if any of that sounds like you, then you need to stop everything you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you could either save your visa, save your job, or save your entire Australian dream. Or it could be the information that stops you from making a mistake that tens of thousands of people are making at this very moment without even realizing it. Australia's work visa rules have changed. They have changed in a big way. They have changed in ways that most people on social media are not talking about, that most migration websites are glossing over, and that most applicants simply do not understand until it is too late. We are talking about three of the most important visa subclasses in the entire Australian immigration system: the 482, the 494, and the 186, and every single one of them has been hit with significant updates heading into 2026 that will determine whether your application succeeds or fails, whether you qualify for permanent residency or get stuck in a loop, and whether the money you invested in your migration journey turns into a life in Australia or a very expensive lesson. So in this video, I am going to walk you through everything, from the brand new salary thresholds that are coming into effect on the 1st of July, 2026, to the complete overhaul of the 482 visa that most people still do not fully understand, to the 494 regional pathway that is quietly becoming one of the smartest routes to Australian permanent residency, and the 186 employer nomination scheme changes that could either fast-track you to a permanent visa or catch you completely off guard. And I am going to do all of this in plain language that you can actually understand and act on today. Now, before we dive in, I want to ask you something. How many of you have friends or family members who are either waiting for their Australian visa, planning to apply, or already living in Australia on a temporary work visa right now? If you do, please share this video with them right now, because the information I am about to give you could genuinely change the direction of their lives. And if you are new here, welcome. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we cover updates like this every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Let us start from the very beginning, so that even if you are completely new to the Australian immigration system, you can follow along and understand exactly what is happening. Australia has a serious problem. It does not have enough skilled workers. For years, Australian industries, from healthcare to construction, from information technology to aged care, from engineering to education, have been struggling to find enough qualified local workers to fill critical positions. And the Australian government's solution to this problem has always been to bring in skilled workers from overseas. But how they do that, how they control it, what salaries those workers must be paid, which jobs qualify, and what pathway those workers have to permanent residency, all of that is determined by the visa framework. And that framework has just gone through one of the most significant changes in many years. So let us talk about the 482 visa first, because this is the one that affects the largest number of people. For years, the 482 was known as the Temporary Skill Shortage Visa, or TSS. It was the main route for skilled workers to come to Australia on a temporary basis under employer sponsorship. And while it worked, it had problems. It was rigid, it was restrictive, and it often left workers feeling trapped by their employers because the rules were just not flexible enough to allow people to move around freely. But all of that changed on the 7th of December, 2024, when Australia officially launched what they are now calling the Skills in Demand Visa, still technically known as Subclass 482, but operating under a completely new framework. And as we move through 2026, this is the landscape you are now operating in. The old system had two main streams, short-term and medium-term, based on occupation lists. The new system has three clearly defined streams based on salary levels and occupation types. And understanding these three streams is absolutely critical, because the stream you fall into will determine everything: your eligibility, your salary requirements, your path to permanent residency, and even how fast your application gets processed. The first stream is the core skills stream. This is the pathway that most skilled workers will use. Under the core skills stream, your job must be on the brand new core skills occupation list, which people are now calling the CSWL. This list replaced all the old occupation lists, the medium-term list, the short-term list, and the regional occupation list. and it currently includes 456 occupations that are considered in demand across Australia. We are talking about engineers, nurses, IT professionals, educators, social workers, and dozens of other skilled roles. Now, here is something really important that a lot of people are getting wrong. Some of the occupations that used to be on the old lists are no longer there. The cafe and restaurant manager role, for example, has been removed. ICT support engineer has been removed. Graphic designer has been removed. So if you are planning your migration around one of these roles, you need to reassess your strategy right now. On the other hand, new occupations have been added that were not there before. Roles like data analyst, supply chain analyst, tour guide, and childcare worker are now on the list. Beauty therapists have been added. Accommodation and hospitality managers are now included. To qualify for the core skills stream in 2026, your employer must be an approved sponsor, the job must be on the CSL, and you must be paid at least the core skills income threshold. And here is where it gets really important. Right now, the core skills income threshold sits at 76,515 Australian dollars per year. But from the 1st of July, 2026, and that date is coming faster than most people realize, that threshold is going up. The new core skills income threshold from the 1st of July will be 79,499 Australian dollars per year. That is an increase of almost $3,000. That is a 3.9% jump. And while that might sound like a small number, what it means in practice is that any employer who is planning to nominate a worker for a 482 visa on or after the 1st of July must ensure the salary being offered meets this new minimum. If the salary is below 79,499 Australian dollars, the nomination will be rejected. Full stop. Now imagine you are a skilled worker who has been negotiating a job offer with an Australian employer for the past few months. You have agreed on a salary. Your employer has begun the sponsorship process. Everything seems to be moving along. And then suddenly, on the 1st of July, the minimum salary threshold increases and the salary you negotiated no longer meets the legal requirement. Your entire application could be at risk. This is not a hypothetical situation. Migration lawyers and agents across Australia are warning employers and workers about exactly this right now, urging everyone who has a nomination in their pipeline to either fast-track the application before the 1st of July or ensure the salary is adjusted upward to meet the new threshold. The second stream under the new 482 framework is the specialist skills stream. This one is for hiring professionals. If you are earning above the specialist skills income threshold, which currently sits at 141,210 Australian dollars and is rising to 146,717 Australian dollars from the 1st of July, 2026, then your employer does not need to prove that your occupation is on any list. There is no CSL requirement for the specialist skills stream. You just need to be earning above the threshold, and you can be sponsored regardless of your specific occupation. However, and this is a big however, trades workers, machinery operators, drivers, and laborers are specifically excluded from this stream. And there are only 3,000 places allocated per year for the specialist skills stream. So competition can be fierce and applications are processed with speed in mind. Some migration agents have noted that processing times for this stream can be as fast as 7 days, which is remarkable compared to other visa pathways. The third stream is the labor agreement stream, which is transitioning toward what will eventually be called the essential skills stream. This stream is for employers who have a specific labor agreement with the Australian government, and it is often used in sectors with very acute shortages: aged care, meat processing, dairy farming, and other industries where workers cannot always meet the salary thresholds of the first two streams. This stream involves union oversight, sector caps, and specific government negotiations, and it is more complex than the other two. If you are looking at this stream, you really need to speak with a registered migration agent who specializes in your sector. Now let us talk about something that has genuinely changed the game for workers under the new 482 framework. And this is something that many people who were previously locked out of the system can now actually benefit from. Work experience requirements have been cut in half. Under the old system, you needed 2 full years of relevant work experience before you could even be considered for employer sponsorship. That meant that a lot of mid-career professionals, recent graduates who had built up some experience, and people transitioning between sectors were simply ineligible. Under the new skills in demand framework, you now only need 1 year of relevant full-time work experience, and that experience must have been gained within the past 5 years. This single change has opened the door for thousands of workers who were previously shut out, and it is particularly good news for international students who are finishing up their graduate visas in Australia. You no longer need to wait years to be sponsored. If you have 12 months of relevant experience under your belt, your employer can begin the sponsorship process now. And then there is the portability issue, which is something that caused enormous stress and unhappiness for workers under the old system. Under the previous rules, if you lost your job or wanted to leave an employer you were unhappy with, you had just 60 days to find a new sponsor. 60 days. In a country as competitive as Australia, that was barely enough time to search for a role, negotiate an offer, and get a new sponsor to begin the nomination process. Many skilled workers were effectively trapped in bad employment situations because they were terrified of that 60-day countdown. Under the new skills in demand framework, that grace period has been extended to 180 days. That is 6 months. 6 full months to find a new sponsor, negotiate a new role, and continue building your life in Australia without the constant fear of your visa becoming invalid. This is a massive quality of life improvement for skilled workers across the country. There is also something else I want to flag here, and this is something that a senior migration law firm has called dead time. Under the new rules, if you switch to a new employer using that 180-day window, the time you spend waiting for your new sponsorship or nomination to be finalized does not automatically count toward your pathway to permanent residency. So if you are a 482 visa holder who is counting on that 2-year work period to become eligible for a permanent resident visa, and we are going to talk about that pathway in a moment, you need to understand that gaps in your sponsorship status can create gaps in your PR timeline. This is not a minor administrative issue. This is something that can delay your permanent residency by months, and in some cases, it can push you back to the very beginning of the process. Talk to your migration agent before you make any moves. Speaking of compliance, and I cannot stress this enough, the system in 2026 is not just more flexible. It is also far more strict when it comes to enforcement. The Australian Taxation Office and the Department of Home Affairs now conduct automatic quarterly data matching. Every quarter, they compare the payroll records of sponsored workers against the salaries and occupations that were declared in the visa nominations. If there is a mismatch, if you are being paid less than your nominated salary, or if you are doing work that does not match your nominated occupation, the system flags it automatically. Employers who are caught underpaying sponsored workers face not just financial penalties, but the loss of their sponsorship status entirely. And workers in this situation can find their visas canceled through no fault of their own. This is why it is so important for both employers and workers to treat migration compliance as an ongoing obligation, not just something you deal with at the application stage. Now let us talk about the 494 visa, because this is the pathway that I think is genuinely underrated and that more people should be seriously considering in 2026. The subclass 494, officially called the Skilled Employer-Sponsored Regional Visa, is a 5-year provisional visa that is specifically designed for skilled workers who are willing to live and work in regional Australia. When people hear the word regional, they sometimes think of remote outback locations that are far from everything. But here is the truth. Regional, in Australian immigration terms, includes some incredibly livable and vibrant cities and areas. All of Australia except Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane is considered regional for visa purposes. That includes cities like Adelaide, Perth, Hobart, Canberra, Darwin, the Gold Coast, Newcastle, Wollongong, and hundreds of other locations that offer an excellent quality of life, great infrastructure, and a genuinely wonderful standard of living. The 494 visa works like this. You need to find an approved employer in a designated regional area who is willing to sponsor you. That employer must demonstrate that they could not find a suitable Australian worker for the role, and they must offer you a full-time position that lasts for at least 5 years. You must be under 45 years of age, have the relevant skills assessment for your occupation, demonstrate at least competent English, which means an IELTS score of 6 or its equivalent, and your occupation must be on the eligible skilled occupation list. Unlike the new 482 framework, which now uses the core skills occupation list, the 494 still uses the older occupation lists. which in some cases actually includes roles that have been removed from the newer 482 CSLO. So if your occupation was removed from the 482 system, it might still be available under the 494 pathway. That is worth checking with a migration agent. Now here is the most important thing about the 494 visa, and this is what makes it so powerful as a strategy in 2026. After you have lived and worked in a designated regional area for 3 years, you become eligible to apply for permanent residency through the subclass 191 visa, which is the permanent residence skilled regional visa. This means the 494 is not just a temporary work visa. It is a direct and structured pathway to Australian permanent residency. And compared to the metropolitan pathways, the 191 is significantly less competitive, has shorter queues, and is supported by the Australian government's strong policy push to get more skilled workers settled permanently in regional areas. The salary threshold for the 494 visa is linked to what is called the Temporary Skilled Migration Income Threshold, or TSMIT. Currently, this sits at 76,515 Australian dollars, and it is also rising on the 1st of July, 2026. From July 1st, that threshold will increase to 79,499 Australian dollars. Just like with the 482, any nomination for a 494 visa that is lodged on or after the 1st of July must meet this new minimum salary requirement, or the application will be refused. There is also an important strategic advantage with the 494 that a lot of people overlook. Regional employers in sectors like healthcare, education, agriculture, aged care, and construction often face more acute shortages than their counterparts in the major cities. This means they are often more motivated to sponsor workers, more willing to invest in the process, and in some cases, more supportive of their workers' pathway to permanent residency because retaining that worker long-term benefits the business. If you are a skilled worker in any of those sectors and you are open to life outside Sydney or Melbourne, the 494 could genuinely be your fastest and most reliable route to calling Australia home permanently. Now let us move on to the 186 visa, which is the employer nomination scheme, and this is where we talk about permanent residency. The subclass 186 is Australia's primary employer-sponsored permanent resident visa. Unlike the 482 and 494, which are temporary or provisional pathways, the 186 is a permanent visa. When you are granted a 186, you are a permanent resident of Australia from day one. You have the right to live and work in Australia indefinitely, to access Medicare, to sponsor eligible family members, and eventually to apply for Australian citizenship. There are two main ways to access the 186 in 2026. The first is the Temporary Residence Transition Stream, which is the one that the vast majority of 482 visa holders will use. The second is the Direct Entry Stream, which is for workers who have not previously held a 482 visa but meet the skills and experience requirements. Let us focus on the Temporary Residence Transition Stream, because this is what affects hundreds of thousands of people right now. Under this stream, if you hold a 482 visa and you have completed 2 full years of employment with your sponsoring employer in the nominated occupation, your employer can nominate you for a permanent 186 visa. 2 years. That is it. And here is something that is really important. That 2-year period is now portable across multiple employers. Under the updated rules, the time you spent working with a previous approved sponsor can count toward your 2-year requirement, provided your nominated occupation remained the same. So if you worked for one employer for 14 months and then switched to another employer who continued your sponsorship in the same occupation, those 14 months still count. You do not lose that time. This is a significant improvement from the old system where continuity requirements were much stricter. However, to apply for the 186 visa, there are additional requirements beyond just the 2 years of work. You must be under 45 years of age at the time of application, although there are some exemptions for certain occupations in the health and education sectors. You must demonstrate competent English, which under the 186 is set at IELTS 6.0 in each band, which is a higher bar than the 5.0 required for the 482. And for some occupations, you may need to obtain a positive skills assessment from the relevant assessing authority. These are not just administrative boxes to tick. They are genuine requirements that can trip people up if they do not prepare for them in advance. And now here is the part that nobody is talking about enough. The salary threshold for the 186 is also going up on the 1st of July, 2026. The minimum annual earnings threshold for the 186 employer nomination scheme aligns with the core skills stream threshold under the 482. That means from the 1st of July, the salary that your employer is nominating you for must meet the new core skills income threshold of 79,499 Australian dollars per year. Migration law firms are now warning employers across Australia to review their 186 nomination pipelines urgently and identify any workers who are currently earning below that new threshold. If your salary sits between 76,515 and 79,499 Australian dollars right now, and your employer has not yet lodged your 186 nomination, you could find yourself in a situation where either your employer needs to give you a pay rise to meet the new threshold, or your nomination needs to be fast-tracked before the 1st of July to lock in the current lower threshold. Let us just take a moment to think about what this means in real practical terms. Imagine you are a registered nurse who has been working at a hospital in Adelaide for the past 18 months on a 482 visa. You are approaching the 2-year mark and you are excited about finally being able to apply for your permanent residency. Your employer has been fantastic and has agreed to nominate you for the 186 visa. Your current salary is 77,000 Australian dollars a year. Right now, that meets the minimum threshold. But if your employer does not lodge the nomination before the 1st of July, 2026, your salary will no longer meet the new minimum of 79,499. Your employer will need to increase your pay, or your application will be refused. And a refusal is not just a delay. It can create complications in your visa status and your entire migration timeline. This is exactly the kind of situation that is playing out right now in workplaces across Australia, and many workers are completely unaware of it because their employers have not told them. Migration agents and law firms are being very clear about their advice. If you are an employer with workers in the 482 nomination pipeline, or workers who are approaching their 186 eligibility, you need to look at your timeline right now. If you can lodge nominations before the 1st of July, do it. If you cannot, then plan for the salary increases. Failing to do so does not just inconvenience your worker, it potentially kills their PR pathway, which could mean you lose a valuable skilled team member that you have invested years in training. Let us also talk about one of the most common mistakes that people make when they are navigating the Australian work visa system, because I see this again and again, and it breaks my heart every time. The mistake is this. People assume that being on a visa automatically means everything is being taken care of. They assume their employer is handling compliance. They assume their salary is correct. They assume their occupation is correctly classified. And then one day, often at the worst possible moment, when they are about to lodge their permanent residency application, they find out that something has been wrong for months or even years. Maybe their payroll was processed incorrectly and they were underpaid. Maybe their occupation code was listed incorrectly on the nomination. Maybe their employer changed their job responsibilities without updating the visa documentation. And in each of these cases, the consequences can be severe. Visa cancellation, refusal of the PR application, in extreme cases, being asked to leave Australia. This is not meant to scare you, but it is meant to make you realize that you have a responsibility to stay informed about your own visa situation. You should know what your nominated salary is. You should know what occupation code was used in your nomination. You should know what the conditions of your visa are and what you are and are not allowed to do. If you are not sure about any of these things, book an appointment with a registered migration agent today. Not next month. Today. Let us also quickly talk about the industries and sectors where all of these visa changes are having the biggest impact right now, because this is really useful context for understanding what kind of applicants Australia is most actively looking for in 2026. Healthcare is the #1 priority. Australia is facing a chronic shortage of registered nurses, general practitioners, specialists, allied health workers, and aged care workers. If you work in healthcare and you are looking at Australia as a migration destination, 2026 is genuinely one of the best years in recent history to be making that move. Your occupation is on the core skills occupation list. You have priority processing in many states. And many healthcare employers are actively funding migration costs for workers they want to bring across. Information technology is also extremely active. Software engineers, data analysts, cybersecurity specialists, cloud architects, and network professionals are all in massive demand. The tech sector in Australia has been growing rapidly, particularly in Sydney, Melbourne, and increasingly in cities like Brisbane and Perth. And if your salary is above 146,717 Australian dollars from July 2026, you might qualify for the specialist skills stream, which means no occupation list requirements and some of the fastest visa processing times in the system. Construction and engineering are also areas of acute shortage, particularly as Australia continues to invest heavily in infrastructure, from housing developments to rail and road projects to renewable energy. Structural engineers, civil engineers, project managers, quantity surveyors, these are all in high demand and appear prominently on the core skills occupation list. Education is another sector seeing significant demand, particularly for teachers in primary, secondary, and early childhood education. Childcare workers have recently been added to the CSOL, reflecting the government's recognition of the shortage in that sector. And then there is aged care, which is a sector that is deeply connected to the developing essential skills stream and the labor agreement pathway. Australia's aging population is creating increasing demand for aged care workers, disability support workers, and personal care assistants. Many of these roles are filled through DAMA arrangements, designated area migration agreements, which allow regional employers in specific areas to sponsor workers at slightly lower salary levels than the standard thresholds. Now I want to address something that I know a lot of you are thinking about right now. What about the costs? What does it actually cost to go through this process? For the 482 Skills in Demand visa, the primary application charge is approximately 3,210 Australian dollars for the main applicant. Family members who are added to the application will each incur additional charges. On top of this, the employer must pay a nomination fee of 330 Australian dollars and, critically, the Skilling Australians Fund levy, which is either 1,200 or 1,800 Australian dollars per year of the visa, depending on the size of the business. This levy is a legal requirement and cannot be passed on to the worker. The employer must pay it. If any employer is asking you to pay the SAF levy, that is a red flag and potentially a violation of their sponsorship obligations. For the 186 permanent residency visa, the main applicant fee is 4,640 Australian dollars, and dependents will also have application fees. There will also be costs associated with skills assessments, English language tests, medical examinations, and police clearance certificates. When you add everything up, including migration agent fees if you use one, a full 482 to 186 migration journey can cost anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 Australian dollars over the course of 2 to 3 years. That is a significant investment. But when you compare it to the value of obtaining Australian permanent residency, access to Medicare, the ability to live and work anywhere in Australia, a pathway to citizenship, the security of your future in one of the world's most livable countries, most people would say it is worth every cent. For the 494 regional visa, the costs are comparable to the 482, with the visa application charges plus the employer's SAF levy obligations. The subsequent 191 permanent residency visa, which you can apply for after 3 years in regional Australia, carries its own application charges as well. And here is something many people do not factor into their planning. Visa application charges in Australia are indexed and can increase. We have already seen the student visa application charge jump significantly in March of 2026. Work visa charges have historically been reviewed as well. So if you are planning your migration journey, do not budget based on today's fees and assume they will stay the same for the next 2 or 3 years. Plan for some upward movement. Before we wrap up, I want to give you a few key action points, things you can do right now based on everything we have covered in this video. If you are a skilled worker who is thinking about applying for a 482 visa, the single most important thing you can do right now is check whether your occupation is on the core skills occupation list. The CSLL is publicly available on the Department of Home Affairs website. Find your occupation, confirm your ANZSCO code, and make sure you are targeting the right stream based on the salary your employer can realistically offer. If your occupation has been removed from the CSOL, like cafe and restaurant manager or graphic designer, you need to explore alternative pathways immediately, and a registered migration agent can help you identify your options. If you are currently on a 482 visa and approaching the 2-year mark for your permanent residency application, speak to your employer now about your 186 nomination timeline. Make sure your salary meets the new $79,499 threshold that takes effect on the 1st of July, 2026. If it does not, you need to have that conversation with your employer well in advance, not after the deadline has passed. If you are open to living in regional Australia, take the 494 visa pathway seriously. Research regional employers in your sector. Look at cities like Adelaide, Darwin, Hobart, and Canberra, places that offer a genuine and excellent quality of life. The 494 to 191 pathway is one of the most reliable routes to permanent residency in Australia, and it is less competitive than many metropolitan pathways. If you are an employer who is sponsoring workers or planning to sponsor workers, conduct a salary audit of your entire sponsored workforce right now. Make sure every current and upcoming nomination meets the salary thresholds that will apply from the 1st of July. Talk to your HR team and your migration agent. Fast-track any nominations that are ready to go before the July deadline. Failure to comply with the new thresholds will not only result in visa refusals, it exposes your business to penalties, sponsor monitoring visits, and potentially the loss of your sponsorship status entirely. And if you are an employer in the hospitality, aged care, or agribusiness sectors who is worried about the rising thresholds, because I know these sectors often run on tight margins, and meeting $79,499 Australian dollars as a minimum salary is genuinely challenging. Explore alternative pathways like the Designated Area Migration Agreements and the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, both of which offer concessions on salary and skills in exchange for regional and sector-specific commitments. The bottom line is this: Australia is open for skilled migration. The government wants skilled workers. The economy needs them. But the rules are changing, the thresholds are rising, and the compliance environment is tighter than ever. The workers and employers who will succeed in 2026 are the ones who understand the system, who plan ahead, who meet their obligations proactively, and who treat their migration journey as a long-term strategy rather than a short-term transaction. I really hope this video has helped you understand what is changing, why it matters, and what you need to do about it. If you found this useful, and I genuinely hope you did, please hit that like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps more people just like you find this information before it is too late for them. And if you know someone who is on an Australian work visa, planning to apply, or thinking about permanent residency, please share this video with them. You could literally be helping them protect their visa and their future in Australia. Subscribe to this channel if you want to stay updated on all the immigration changes happening in 2026 and beyond, because things are moving fast, and we will be right here covering every update as it happens. And drop a comment below and tell me, are you on a 482, a 494, or planning to apply for a 186? Let me know where you are in your Australian journey, and I will do my best to respond to as many of you as possible. Until next time, stay informed, stay prepared, and keep working toward that Australian dream, because it is absolutely worth it.